Hello there, this is BK on the air, here to tell you that if you hear the telephone number, please don't call, because this is a rebroadcast.
Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question. Does Barry Manilow know that you raid his wardrobe?
I'll give you the answer to that question, Mr. Bender, next Saturday. Don't mess with the bull, young man. You'll get the horns.
Hey, that's right. Look out. Here we go. I'm getting ready to do it. I'm turning all the buttons on. Countdown's ready. We're on the pad. We're ready to launch. We're going to launch it right now. I'm your retro radio rocket man. It's BK on the air here on AM 1450 and FM 100.3 WBHF. By the way, you can stream us online if you can't hear us on the radio. You know that old-fashioned thing you have in your room that sits up on the shelf with an antenna on it, or in your car. I don't think cars really have radios anymore. They have infotainment systems. There's certain terms have been abandoned now. You don't say TV anymore. Hey, I want to go buy a TV. No, I'm going to buy a flat screen. I'm going to go buy a plasma screen or whatever. But you don't just go have a radio installed in your car or have one coming from the factory. It's an infotainment system if you have a newer car. It's this big giant screen that sits right there where you can look to the right, and there it is, and you've got your fuel consumption readout on it. It's basically just like a little mini computer in your car, in your automobile. Back when I had a car, my first car had a radio in it, and it was AM. And hey, nothing wrong with AM. Goes around AM radio, and I hope AM radio sticks around too, because there's a big push to not have them around anymore. And I'm like, no, AM radio, FM radio, the signal that you can get as opposed to streaming is still relevant. It's still awesome, and I think needs to stay around, because if you can't get a stream, or you don't have a signal on your phone or something like that, and you got a storm alert or something going on that is an emergency, where's the first place that people usually do? They actually usually pop right to that radio and turn it on. If you're stuck in traffic, you're not listening to a streaming thing, or the streaming thing that you're listening to is not local, you can always flip right over to that AM or FM signal if you're in the town that you're where radio stations are located, where you are locally, and find out what the heck's going on the road. So I think radio is relevant. I'm part of radio, and a lot of us here are. Obviously, we're part of radio, and Alan Sanders is here with me. I'm sure that you agree about everything that I said about radio being still relevant. The signal, the broadcast signals of AM and FM are still relevant to this 100%. Day. Agree with that, and not just thank you. I didn't get a harumph out of that guy.
Harumph.
I don't say that because I'm in radio. Well, partly I do, but I say it because it's true. It's very true. I still find myself going to the radio sometime and turning it on and finding out what's going on. So somebody's trying to call me right now as the show starts. Let's go and find out who it is. Hey, it's BK on there. Hello.
Hey, BK. This is Steve.
Hey, Steve. How you doing? You're the first caller of the day.
Yeah, and I listen every day to the radio.
That's awesome.
Yeah, y'all were talking about antennas, and my dad had a 40-foot tower that we would climb when he wasn't around.
Oh, really?
Okay. Oh, yeah. He had the rotary on it. All my friends were impressed because we could pick up Dothan. So I lived in Panama City, so we could pick up Dothan, Alabama, and he had the FM antenna, with a nice power system. And we could pick up TK 101 in Pensacola.
Wow, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
So all my friends saw we were top dogs, but I watched a lot of classic movies on WTBS.
Back when the Superstation Turner Broadcasting was WTBS, yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
And I'll go you one even better. I used to watch Channel 17 when it was WTCG in Atlanta, way back when you could just see it on an UHF antenna, Channel 17. I think WTCG stood for Turner Communication Group back then. Is what that stood for. So it's evolved several times.
Yeah. But on a good clear night, and on the weekends we could stay up till midnight, which seemed like 2 or 3 in the morning now.
Oh yeah.
And we could pick up Channel 17 in Atlanta. Anyway, I just thought it was cool.
The Superstation is cool. Buddy, I appreciate it. Some nice memories. I went through the same thing, and it was fun doing that growing up. Radio antennas for television and antennas for radio and whatever you got. It's still around.
Hey, will you tell your brother Alan he needs to bring you in more during the week?
My brother Alan is right here. He heard you say it. So
no, Stephen, I can only tell you this so many times. Just like I don't get to make decisions in my own household, I have a show producer who rules content with an iron fist.
That's right, man.
I have to make it past the Garcia threshold.
I had to beg just to get on to talk about Classic Movie Day last week because Jim Dunham, Jim Dunham couldn't make it from the Booth Western Art Museum, so they had me on to talk about classic movies this past week. So I was glad.
I was too.
Yeah, I was too.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, buddy.
Y'all take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Yeah, I agree with that. But we lived in an area, talk about television and watching it on antenna, which you have to have a special antenna now to watch television. You can still see it with an antenna. It's just a different digital broadcast. We lived on top of a mountain in Fort Payne, Alabama at one point, and being on top of the mountain with a antenna aerial for television, we could receive TV from Chattanooga, Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia, Huntsville, Alabama, and Birmingham. So I had at my fingertips almost 12, 13 stations to watch. It was almost like having cable back then, just depending on which way I turned the antenna. I had a whole lot of TV stations to choose from, and it was a crystal clear signal.
We had 4 for sure VHF stations we could pull in.
Yeah.
And we had 4 for sure UHF stations we could pull in. And they were like, how do you do that? Well, we have the rotor. How bananas is that? We were happy with 8 options.
Oh, yeah. and we thought I thought I was flying high when I could watch 2 different Star Trek episodes in the afternoon from 2 different stations. I had 2 different to choose from in syndication. I thought I was flying
they didn't
high.
air obviously at the same time, or they did?
They
you could
aired.
choose?
Well, one would start at like 4:30, and one would start at 4 on 2 different stations, like 2 different Huntsville and Chattanooga markets.
That's weird. Starting on a 30. That's
and,
wild.
Yeah, I hated that. It's like, who starts an hour show in syndication on the half hour? That was odd for that one station to do
so
that.
So you could start watching the one if you're like, let me see what the other one is, switch over. Like, oh, okay, I've seen that one too. I'll go back to the first one.
Did you have a camera in my house? That's exactly what I did.
That's exactly what I would do.
Exactly what I did. So yeah, it was a fun time growing up and doing that. But back to the radio signal. I think you're up on the current events of bills and stuff. What's the AM radio thing that's going on?
Car makers are like, it doesn't make sense to take up the electronics and this because it's so much
because
room
it's an infotainment system
take up
now.
An AM. Why bother with putting the technology to receive AM when nobody really cares about AM anymore?
Okay, who doesn't care? Did they take a poll? Did they talk to people?
According to auto manufacturers, and so I have seen the NAB, which is the National Association of Broadcasters,
right, exactly.
is petitioning all of the state, like in this case the GAB in Georgia.
Georgia Association.
They want all radio stations to start putting out PSAs and campaigns to inform the audience and say, hey, by the way, you might not be able to get AM in a car anymore if we don't petition our automakers to change their minds.
And how much extra technology space in an infotainment system can it take up when you've got vehicle information and texting and Apple CarPlay and all that other stuff that's in there?
How much does it cost to put an AM receiver chip and then an antenna to pick up AM? Is it really going to save you?
I don't know. I don't see that, but I say leave it alone. And we're on radio, of course we'd say that. But if I didn't work in radio and have a show, I'd still say that because I like the variety that I can get. It's Beaky on the Air. We're going to hear from Pat McCormick at the Golden Ridge TV when we come back.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Oh no, it's not. That record isn't ruined. Don't believe me? See, the music's unharmed. This is Zenith's remarkable MicroTouch 2G tone arm. Because the needle floats within the tone arm, you can drop it, even slide it. It's impossible to accidentally ruin your records on Zenith stereo. In fact, the needle pressure is so light, your records last far longer on a Zenith. And you get the greatest stereo separation in a complete home console. And now, another new stereo achievement from Zenith, the solid-state 240W amplifier with an amazing 240 watts of peak music power. To bring you the most spectacular stereo sound ever heard from a complete home console. Exclusively at Zenith dealers in a selection of fine furniture cabinetry. At Zenith, the quality goes in before the name goes on.
America is on the go from Maine to the Grand Canyon with a portable radio as a traveling companion. America is on the go, Detroit to San Diego with a portable radio, a toteable, packable, portable radio.
Oh, you bastards! Why are you torturing me like this? Why? Fellow classic TV fans, UFO was a British science fiction television series that aired from 1970 to 71. The show was created by Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, the same team responsible for the popular puppet-based shows Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet, among others. UFO was renowned for its groundbreaking special effects, which were considered some of the most impressive of their time. The show made extensive use of miniatures, matte paintings, and other special effect techniques to create its futuristic settings and alien spacecraft. UFO was actually developed as a follow-up to Jerry and Sylvia Anderson's previous television series, Thunderbirds. The Andersons wanted to create a live-action show that would be just as exciting and visually stunning as their puppet-based shows, and UFO was the result. However, the show's more mature themes and darker tones set it apart and helped to establish it as a unique contribution to the science fiction genre. Despite only running for a single season, from the sleek silver spacecraft of the alien invaders to the bright red uniforms and gorgeous crew members with bright purple hairdos, UFO remains an iconic piece of science fiction history that continues to inspire new generations of fans to this day. This is Pat McCormick with your Retro TV Trivia from the Golden Rage of TV. You can also find me on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Golden Rage of TV and on Twitter at Golden Rage of TV1. And now back to BK on the air.
Thank you, Pat, for Golden Rage of TV. Here's a little UFO opening sequence for you. Alan thought that was Austin Powers.
Yeah, baby.
It's not. That's Jerry Anderson's UFO. There's another. Not cinematic universe, but television universe that wasn't necessarily linked.
We know that's not UFO.
It wasn't necessarily linked, but man, the Jerry Anderson catalog of work. He started out with Supercar, all these shows where they were like little puppets, and they would talk. You could see the strings. They didn't bother to hide them or anything, but they were really cool back in the day because that's all they could do. Supercar. They had a show called. They did the Thunderbirds, which actually made it. I think Thunderbirds and Stingray actually made it into syndication over here in America. We didn't see all of his shows, but those two aired in the morning when I got ready for school in the morning. I got to see Thunderbirds, Three Stooges, and Bugs Bunny in the morning before I went to school. And loved Thunderbirds. Creeped my sister out. She's like, that creeps me out. That's like action figures coming to life and chasing me, and I don't like that. I'm like, could creep some people out, but we guys think it's cool. It's kind of like our action figures. You're right. They've come to life and they're walking around and they're alive. But,
I don't know if it was on when I grew up, but I was aware of it, so it must have advertised, and I just never watched it because it wasn't like I discovered it as an adult. I knew of it.
Yeah.
I just can't remember.
We know they made a live action of it in sometime in the 2000s with Bill Paxton in the lead on it. It was called Thunderbirds Are Go. It was an Americanized live action version of Thunderbirds Are Go. Now, I'll tell you something about that, which is funny. We'll get back to the list of shows that he did. They did on the original Thunderbird series in the 60s, the puppet show. Whenever they needed to show a close up of hands, like pushing a button on a control or aircraft controls or anything, it would be a real actor's hands doing it. The close-up was real actors' hands moving around pushing buttons. They weren't going to show the puppet hands. Well, here's the funny thing. When Thunderbirds Are Go came out, the movie with Bill Paxton, it was live action, real actors in it and stuff. But for some reason, there was one shot in the film where it was someone's hand doing something in that movie. It was a puppet's hand. It was just a reverse in one shot, and I think they did that for a homage to the
a little satirical
show.
For those folks who had watched it.
Funny,
they would have gone like, "Oh, I get it."
That was kind of funny. But you may remember. Well, UFO came next, I think, on their list of shows that we saw here in America. Right after that, you might remember a show called Space 1999. That was a Jerry Anderson show. Derek Meddings was one of his special effects guys who handled all the miniature eagles, the little spaceships and stuff. They all looked fantastic. It looked very 2001-ish. It was like the attention to detail was great. And Derek Meddings took care of those, and he went on to do the Bond films, the miniatures, the Bond films, like Moonraker and all that stuff. A lot of his work was featured on movies in England and won a lot of awards. But yeah, Space 1999. Then you went into I think they had one called Terrahawks in the 80s, and Space Precinct, about a distant police department. a guy that transfers from New York City police to Demeter City on another planet to work for their police department with the aliens and stuff to help fight crime on a planet. Jerry Anderson just had a lot of shows.
So
action,
this was
adventure,
pre-Alien
sci-fi.
Nation.
Oh yeah,
with James Caan. Where
No.
the
show Space Precinct was after Alien Nation. It was after that.
Okay.
But it was kind of a reversal. The human went to their planet instead and
Right.
started working for them.
Okay.
But yeah, Jerry Anderson, the guy, the British used to call him the guy who likes to play with toys on his shows, and and it was a legend. He really was. So I want to give out the number 770-386-1450 is our number today. Alan and I are going to do something today interesting later on in the program. We'll give people time to think about it, and if you want to chime in on it, you can do it at any time. This past May 16th, today, I'll do On This Day in History today later, because today is May the 20th when we're recording this or doing this show. But May the 16th was just this past week, and that was called Classic Film Day.
Mm-hmm.
And we like to recognize whatever national day it is or what special day it is on this day in history and what classic day it is, and sometimes just for the heck of it, because it's something to talk about. Everybody's like, why do you do the stupid on this national so-and-so day? It's so dumb. I'm like, well, I think what it does
We don't disagree.
No, I don't disagree.
but-
Some of them are dumb. But it gives us something to talk about, and if it shines a light of awareness on something that you may not know about, it's kind of fun. You're like, oh, I didn't know it was Be Kind to Your Husband Day today. I think I'll be kind to him today. So if that works.
Look, if we can convert Mike
cool.
Garcia, maybe I've just worn him down, but if I can get Mike Garcia to appreciate some of the National Day ofs, then everybody should be able to appreciate.
He's got a strong suit of armor. It's going to take a lot to get through the whole thing.
It's hard.
So,
that dude's
you're
got
chipping
walls.
away at it.
That dude's
which
got
is
Tron
cool.
layer walls. I'm going to need the disc to get in there.
Well,
I can't.
if you follow my Facebook page, Twitter, and Instagram, where I am out there, you'll notice that I put some images up from classic films that I really like. So you may know what some of them on my list are. But Alan and I have got some older films and some what's considered maybe newer films on our list that we'll talk about today. And we will talk about them today on the air and kind of weave them along, and we'll do it all at once. I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go in the next commercial break. We'll talk about it. I haven't really planned how we're going to do it, but that's how I do the whole show.
Mine.
So
I'll tell you how I did mine when we get to it.
Okay, and mine's just in no particular order, but they're on there, and I do love every film on here. 770-386-1450 is our number. Someone's calling right now. Hello, hey, it's BK on the air. Hello.
Ooh.
Oh, they hung up.
Everybody
Okay,
clap
call
your
back.
hands.
Call back if you want, because I'm
All right.
But you can call with maybe somebody calling with their classic film, and they all of a sudden they went, oh, wait, no, I don't think that's a classic one. Maybe I'll change it. So, and I had to, and when you call, I'll put this caveat on it. If you call with your, just give me a couple of your favorite, what's considered classic motion pictures of all time, because classic films, make sure they're classics. Now, it's not your favorite movie of all time. It's your favorite classic.
No, it could be your
film.
favorite.
Well, it could be, yeah, but don't make it like, I love Flash Gordon. See, I love the movie Flash Gordon, but I don't consider it a classic film. It's a classic cult film, but that's of a different nature. Hey, it's BK on there. Hello, who is this?
Hey, it's Chance in Atlanta. You were talking about Jerry Anderson?
Yes, the great Jerry Anderson, the man who likes to play with toys, and I loved almost everything the guy did.
I thought his name was Gary because it was spelled with a G in the credits.
I had a buddy, a guy that I worked for, that he spelled his name Jerry with a G, but it can go either way.
Oh, yeah, okay. Jerry Anderson. That's the British spelling of it.
Jerry.
Probably, yeah.
Oh, Jerry.
Anderson. Well, Chance, since I got you on the line, if you had to pick your favorite Jerry Anderson show, and there's a lot of them, and I think between you and I, we've seen a lot that didn't make it to America, like Joe 90 and the Secret Service and a lot of other shows that didn't make it over here, some of his puppet shows. Do you have I have one, but what's your favorite Jerry Anderson show if you had to just pick one?
Space 1999.
Hands down, me too. What a great ahead of its time show that was. If only they could have run for another 2 or 3 seasons, what they could have done. But geez, the show was just way too expensive to produce after they found out about how much it cost. So, yeah, that was great. I think they were set.
Brian Johnson went on to do Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. This guy.
He did. He worked on Space 1999. Derek Meddings was big on the show in season 1 and UFO and stuff. And we talked about Derek going on to do the James Bond films. Great special effects guys to go on and do bigger and better things, and they were great effects too in Space 1999.
Absolutely. Well, great show. I'll just keep listening and keep up the great work.
Thank you. I'll talk to you later. Jerry Anderson. I like it when somebody bumps into me and goes, "Oh, I love Space 1999." I used to watch it at midnight on Saturdays. They'd show Star Trek on 11 Alive right here in Atlanta. Channel 11 would show. I think they'd show Saturday Night Live. Then they'd break for some kind of news break, and then they'd go and then they'd play Star Trek, Space 1999, and The Outer Limits. And I had to stay up to like 2 a.m. and watch all three of those shows. And I'm like, man, this is great. I can't. It's never going to get any better than this, but it did though. So
I will tell you, and this is where you and I have mentioned we've got so many similarities in our memories and the movies and growing up.
Yeah.
But sometimes the 3-year age difference is a lifetime difference in
when you're
as
growing
a young
up.
kid.
Not now though. Yeah,
I would catch a handful of episodes of Space 1999, and it never hooked me, and I never felt compelled to watch it. But I watched some. I knew of it.
Yeah.
But I could watch Star Trek anytime. And you would argue, well, what's the difference? I don't know. Something about Star Trek
there was a
captivated me.
Yeah, well, out of the two, I think as far as writing goes, Star Trek was the better written show, I guess. But
for me, I'm watching it at basically, one was probably airing live. The other one was a repeat, but I liked the Star Trek more.
Yeah, and I would say if you get a chance and want to stream it and just give it another try and watch Space Night, you got to remember that when it came out, it's just mid-'70s, so it's going to have the bell-bottom uniform pants, whatever. But if you look beyond that and just look at what they're trying to say and the space travel and the peril, it was a scary show too. It scared the crap out of me as a kid. It's BK on the Air. We're going to flash the audience when we come back.
I'm Martin Landau.
I'm Barbara Bain.
Join us for Space 1999 right here on WGN Television 9.
Everything you could imagine about the future and what exists beyond the boundaries of outer space are vividly confronted in Space 1999, the unlimited adventure series.
Be sure to watch every week Space 1999 here on WGN Television 9.
Space 1999. It's going to be a very good year.
Why do they always sing, "Oh, Fab, I'm glad"?
Because Fab with lemon fresh and borax gives a deep down clean. And now Fab has all fabric brighteners, great for wash and wear and permanent press.
Are you glad about Fab, Mom?
What do you think? Oh, they're always doing something good to Fab. It's true. Oh, Fab, we're glad they added all fabric brighteners to the lemon fresh and borax in you.
Stand by for action. Anything can happen in the next half hour.
Hey, we're back. It's BK on the Air here on AM 1450 and 100.3 FM WBHF. We're taking your classic movie calls today. Call us at 770-386-1450 just whenever you get a chance. And you got a couple of movies because it was Classic Movie Day this past week, and we talked about it, and we got our list that we're going to talk about coming up. But if you got a couple of movies you want to throw out there, make them classic, too, by the way. They have to be a real classic film. If you put 1,000 people in a room and took a poll and went, if they agree that it's classic, and you know what I'm talking about, then that's what we're talking about.
If this helps, one of the criteria, because I know Mike wanted me to say, well, what makes it a classic? The critics all say, well, first, it has to have stood the test of time. Now, you may say, is that 10 years or 30 years? But it needs to be something where it can't be something that just came out recently.
Right, because instant classic, that's not what we're looking for. There's no such thing as an instant classic. I don't think that
have something iconic about it that even if you haven't seen the movie, you would know what that movie is? It's part of, like, the culture. Like, you may have never seen Psycho, but if you go up to somebody and go, wee, 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 be like, oh,
sure.
Psycho. So, iconic character, iconic scene, something that would be universal and sticks with you. So that kind of helps you decide. Because there's a lot of movies you and I love.
Right.
Not classics.
But I don't think they're considered classics. And maybe
Even
they
if they're
will
old.
later. maybe some of them would be later, but some of them would never be considered classics. Because I'm not talking about cult classics, because that's a whole different list.
We should do that sometime.
I love the movie Flash Gordon from 1980, but it would not be on my classic movie list that I've made today. It has to be a classic movie and considered hopefully by a lot, but it has to be one of your favorite classic movies. You may not put, like me, Gone with the Wind is a classic movie. There's no argument that is a classic motion picture. It's one of the most classic ones of all time.
It's not on my top 5.
It's not on either our lists because
or 10.
We're just not a big fan of it, but it doesn't mean it's not a classic movie.
Or 20.
So if that helps you.
Or 100.
And the listeners
In fact,
just turn the radio off.
If there is a
and
list
over
of classic movies that you just can't understand why they're classics,
that's a separate list.
That would be a list.
We could do that too one day.
That may be at the top of that list.
But it was classic. It was classic films There's Classic Film Day on May the 16th, and we talked about it this week, but I know I'm not on the air every day, so I have to take what I can get, talk about stuff that happened all week like that on just
Thankfully,
Saturday.
you were
So
on with us during the week on that one.
I was. I got to come on Bartow's Morning News, and we talked about Classic Movie Day. That was fun. And I think we discovered a lot of things that were like, well, it's got like what makes it classic, how old does it have to be, or whatever. I could see, and we even talked about this. We're like, well, I could see several of the Marvel films becoming classics over time, if not some of them, if not Iron Man already, because Iron Man's already how old now?
12
years old.
13
and
years.
It's getting older.
Yeah.
As we go along.
Oh.
And then you could even say now, since things are shared, you can even maybe call it, we're not going to pick one of the Marvel films, we're just going to call it, it's the MCU, it's a classic universe of films. It's like the rules are changing with streaming.
I mentioned to you,
and movies.
Would the first Harry Potter be considered a classic because it launched a generation of viewers?
I think it is.
I would also argue it's known worldwide, even if you've never seen it.
There's half of a theme park devoted to it. I mean, come on, from that fact right there. And I got some news about that later.
There are people like, but wait a minute, that's not a classic, not old enough yet. Well, the first movie came out over 20 years ago.
20 years. I mean, so come on, what year do we have to put on to make it a classic? I know it can't be. Again, we can't come up with the number of years. You just kind of know. You have to think about each film and gauge them individually, I think.
Personally, if more than one generation would like the movie, like you could sit down with a Gen Z and a Gen Y, and those two,
right.
Or Gen X and a Gen Z. And they go, wow, that is like we did with our kids. We're like, show them The Breakfast Club. Like, hey, we're Gen X. And they're like, oh, that works today.
Sure.
We can recognize those characters. We like that movie. Well, I would say that's a classic.
I think that you should design a website for us, and we should be the arbiters of that. We should be the
keepers of what is
we
classic.
will decide whether that film is classic or not. We'll be and we'll be fair. We'll be fair. I'll consider Gone with the Wind a classic movie. It is. I mean, I know what's classic and what isn't.
I won't post it.
No, you don't. Well, you got to stop that. Then we can't do it then if you're going to do that. Well, the time has come that we flash the audience of the news of the weird,
what?
strange, bizarre. That's a podcast.
That happens later.
That happens all the time on the podcast. I got the first news from UPI. Mysterious lights that prompted reports of UFO sightings in the skies over California were identified by experts as Starlink satellites.
Oh,
so
good.
they were identified after all. Numerous residents of the Sacramento area reported a line of bright lights in the night sky to local media outlets, with some asking whether the lights were visiting starships from another world. I don't know if they put it that way. Hey, are those visiting starships from another world, man?
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, that's exactly what they said. Kyle Waters, the director of the Sacramento State Planetarium, said the lights had a more down-to-earth explanation. They were from 56 Starlink satellites launched from Cape Canaveral, Florida. He said, quote, they eventually will end up in high orbit, high enough where they are basically invisible to the naked eye, but shortly after their launch, they're kind of making their way up into a higher orbit. And so they're much lower down than they'll eventually be, which means they'll be close to us on the surface, which means they're brighter, unquote. Waters said the satellites are particularly visible in the night sky just after sunset and just before sunrise. So they were no longer UFOs, they are IFOs.
Identified flying objects.
And by the way, we just had the Pat McCormick in UFO talking about Jerry Anderson's UFO.
Which
so
is
how
why
appropriate.
I did my throwback, yeah, baby, yeah.
How appropriate. It's not Austin Powers.
I know, but that theme song.
It was.
All right, I've got the next news, baby. Joseph Dituri, a University of South Florida associate professor, broke a world record for the longest time living underwater when he marked his 74th day at Jules Undersea Lodge in Key Largo.
Jules Verne?
I guess it must be an allusion to Mr. Verne.
But wouldn't they call it Verne instead of his first name? That's
they
weird.
just call it Jules Undersea Lodge. Dubbed Project Neptune, Dituri's undersea adventure began March 1 as a mission of the Marine Resources Development Foundation, combining research and ocean conservation outreach. On Saturday, he broke the previous record for living underwater for 73 days, set in 2014 by two professors from Tennessee. Dituri, age 55, who teaches biomedical engineering at the University of South Florida, plans to continue his underwater stay with a goal of reaching a full 100 days. He tweeted about his record on Sunday. Along with raising awareness of marine research and conservation, Project Neptune is studying the physiological and psychological effects of compression on the human body.
Wow.
Can I tell you, this would be a study I would do? I would
You'd do that?
oh my God, to be underwater. And if I want to go out and play, I have to put on scuba gear and go play.
Would you have a fight scene in a bar underwater?
I could do that. I could stage it.
But by the way, I watched not too long ago. I watched Top Secret again. It happened to be on one of the channels on Pluto or something. I'm like, oh, Top Secret's on. Let me stop and watch it for a few minutes. And it was coming up on the underwater fight scene. And when I watched it now, I noticed just a small blooper in it. But when you watch it, you notice when they cut to Val Kilmer's about to punch the guy. So when he's going to punch him, he starts doing his little dancing feet on the bottom of the ocean. You could tell it's a peeling floor of a pool. The concrete is coming off. The paint's peeling off. I'm like, oh, okay, I noticed that now, but I don't care. It's still really funny. Then he winds up his fist like Popeye.
And then pops him with the other hand. He's like over here.
It's like, hey, I'm going to misdirect you here. That's so funny. So that led me to that. By the way, talking about UFOs, let me ask this. Have you ever seen one?
No.
Have you ever had a UFO experience? I haven't either. I've never seen anything in the sky. Now, I've seen something in the sky that might have been a UFO to me. I'm like, I can't tell what that is, but it's not an alien craft. I can tell that. It is unidentified.
I hate
but
rainbows.
It's not an alien creature, I don't think, of any kind. I got the next news. I've never seen a ghost either. As much as I want to see those things, I've never seen
I had one creepy encounter, but I can't guarantee it was a ghost.
Right. I know you told me it was in your neighborhood, right? You told me that.
Yeah, I was like, "What the heck?
Leave
me alone! Stop following me!"
Tell that.
And she did.
Tell that this Halloween on our Halloween Spooktacular. You got to remember to tell that story.
Okay.
From UPI, a Minnesota inventor who gained a following for his unusual vehicles unveiled his latest unique creation. Kai Mikkelsen, whose previous inventions included a rocket-powered toilet and a jet-powered coffee pot, said it's a beer-powered motorcycle he created this time.
Okay.
The coil heats the beer to 300 degrees in the motorcycle, which then becomes superheated stream in the nozzles that propel the bike forward. It could be any kind of liquid, he said. It could be Red Bull. It could be Caribou coffee. It could be anything, even beer. So that's cool. They're going to donate to a museum. Not market it? Why wouldn't they do that? BK on the air.
Munch a bunch, a bunch, a bunch, a munch, a bunch, a munch, a bunch of Fritos go with lunch. Munch a bunch, a munch, a bunch, a munch, a bunch, a munch, a bunch of Fritos go with lunch.
Nothing gives your old lunch new life like Fritos brand corn chips. So munchy, so full of good corn taste.
Munch a bunch, a munch a bunch, munch a bunch, a munch a bunch, munch a bunch of Fritos go with lunch.
Fritos corn chips make lunch much better.
Saturday morning on CBS starts with high-flying fun with Mighty Mouse and Heckle and Jekyll. Then it's the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner Show, followed by the all-new Popeye Hour. And don't miss Fat Albert, Jason of Star Command, and Tarzan and the Super 7. Then there's always something unusual on 30 Minutes. Fun and adventure every Saturday morning on CBS.
Friday, America's master illusionist, David Copperfield, travels to China to perform his greatest feat ever. Can he pass unharmed through the Great Wall of China? Then, on Dallas.
A man would be crazy not to fall in love with you.
Well, I was right about you two all along, wasn't I? A jealous JR is out to get revenge.
Well, it doesn't take a genius to figure that one out.
And on Falcon Crest.
If Peter so much as touches a hair on Grandmother's head, I'll tear him apart.
The Battle of Wills begins.
He's going to wish to God he'd never crossed me.
Friday.
This is CBS.
Hey, we're back. BK on the air here, AM 1450 and 100.3 FM WBHF. Stream us at WBHFradio.org or use the TuneIn or the Radio Garden app on your mobile device or phone, smartphone, cell phone, iPhone, whatever kind of phone you got, not your old-fashioned phone, talking about old things. And by the way, if you want to email me off the air, whatever you want to email me, you want to say something to me, it's bkontheair@gmail.com. If you want to shoot me a message, I would appreciate it. If you have something to say, even if you don't have something to say, send me a picture.
Okay.
Or something fun. That'd be good.
Well, I have a, before we go into the next one, because I have to comment on your prior news flash.
Oh, okay.
I have an issue with wasting beer as fuel.
I would see how that would be a problem, especially when you can use any. He didn't say it, but I guess you could use water, right? He said any kind of liquid. It said on the story.
Mm-hmm.
So why would you put? I guess beer was the novel part of the story, but it is kind of wasteful of something like. And he said it could run on Red Bull or Caribou coffee or whatever kind of thing. You'd be wasting anything that's drinkable, except water's pretty abundant, and it would be cheaper than gas. So why are they don't? The last part of the story said they're going to donate it to a museum. I'm
listen
like,
to
why
this.
not pass on the technology?
I quickly did some calculation in my head because if you missed the story, folks, it's about a guy who invented a vehicle that you can use beer as
or
fuel.
liquid. Yeah, but he pointed out beer.
So you need a
Motorcycle.
12-pack for 1 gallon. A 12-pack runs you about $12.
Yeah, I started saying, wouldn't that be expensive?
I'm not paying $12 a gallon for gasoline.
Yeah, I'd rather just use gas.
So
I'll just buy a regular motorcycle.
I would rather drink my gas than use it.
Right. Hopefully.
if I'm using beer,
You're talking about that.
It's going in a different tank.
Hopefully
it's not going in my car.
Hopefully the point of that whole story, I hope, would mean, hey, we can have cars with a whole lot cheaper propellant in the
If
car.
you can figure out how to
which
get
would
it
be
to
great.
use water, like they keep talking about the whole hydrogen and making those cold fusion, that's fine.
Or maybe urine, and you could just hook up and go pop as you go.
I could
you know
drink
what
the
I'm saying?
beer and fill up the car
And you
at
could
the same
go
time.
and just propel yourself down the road. You just got to make sure when you got to go, you're going to go.
That's disgusting.
Well, let's go ahead and get a couple more of these. I've got the next news.
That's a whole different thing. That would be great.
All right, let's shift gears to Sky News. A driver pulled over for speeding tried to switch places with his dog to avoid arrest. I'm going to guess. I have not read anything further than this. I have not heard this story. There is something else going on here that might be drug and or alcohol related.
You might be right, Rabbit.
Let's find out. An officer in Colorado said he saw the man move over to the passenger seat Saturday night shortly after insisting, it's alleged, that he showed visible signs of drunkenness and ran away from the officer when he asked how much alcohol he consumed. But the suspect didn't get too far. He was caught 59 feet away from the car.
Oh, that was pretty close. Can't get away too far.
59
Tripping over
feet.
his own stupid feet, probably.
He was arrested in the small town of Springfield. The Simpsons. No, this is Colorado, which was a population
there's a
of about
Springfield everywhere.
1,300 people. After being checked over in the hospital, the driver was held on suspicion of charges driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Previous warrants had also been issued for his arrest.
I'm going to go on a limb and say the dog probably couldn't drive, but I'll bet you that dog is smarter than he is.
I would doubt that.
The last news. Deputies in Kansas shared a case of life-imitating art after pulling over a suspect intoxicated driver, another one, who was dressed in a beer can costume on Cinco de Mayo. The driver was stopped in the northbound lanes of I-35 near Ottawa on May the 5th after other motorists notified deputies that he was showing signs of possibly driving under the influence of alcohol. And the Franklin County Sheriff's Office said Saturday, Ottawa is located about 50 miles southeast of Topeka. After the driver pulled over, the sheriff's officer said the deputies were shocked to see the driver, who was wearing a costume of a Bud Light can. Wow, that's crazy. It had to be that one. The driver, who was not publicly identified,
This
was
is not helping the Bud Light
No,
campaign.
Bud Light's in much trouble right now. It's crazy. The driver, who was not publicly identified, was eventually arrested for DUI and then taken to the Franklin County Jail. The sheriff's office said the suspect eventually posted bond and was released from custody. I bet for at least a few minutes he was wearing another type of costume, maybe an orange one, maybe? I don't know.
Could have been.
Yeah. How? Remember the song on Top Secret that Val Kilmer sang? How silly can you get?
Right.
How stupid can you get? There you go, right there. That's pretty stupid.
I've stopped asking humanity, how stupid can you get, because they keep saying, hold my beer. I'll show you.
Hold my costume of a Bud Light.
Hold my costume.
So you could actually could have combined those. It's like, we pulled over a guy who said his dog was driving and he was drunk wearing a Bud Light costume. That could have been the same guy. It would have been funny if all of that had happened. But that's just dumb. You know, I understand that a little too much. If you have a little too much, some people do some people do stupid things without having a little too much. But I just can't. I've never had that problem. I've done some stupid things, believe me. But there's just some people that have, I guess it's called, they have no shame. They don't really think about what
foresight.
they're doing.
They're not thinking
And thank goodness for them, because there's a TV show called Cops because of that. It really spotlights them. I used to do back on the other radio station I was on. We did the precursor to news flashes of the strange and the weird and the bizarre stories that we do. I used to do a clumsy crook segment about stupid crooks that would get caught doing stupid things, and it falls along the same lines. And like I say, Al and I both do not claim that we never did anything stupid. We've done a lot of stupid things. But I don't think we repeated any of them over again. We just made new stupid mistakes.
We make new stupid
later.
mistakes.
But never on camera, never did that, never
Right.
to the point of ruining our lives, never to the point of ruining our credit rating or ever doing anything for the rest of our lives or anything like, or having a record. Never that, thank goodness. And that's I think that's crazy. So 770-386-1450 is our number. We're heading up to the top of the hour.
You don't want to reintroduce our classic?
I think I'll do that because we'll do them in a little at a time because I got so many other stories to go with. Classic Film Day was May the 16th this past week. But I only have a show one day a week, which is Saturday, so I got to squeeze it all in. I'm like, we should just roll that over to Saturday because I texted you. I'm like, hey, let's just do that Saturday since classic movies, that's part of our forte in a way, as movies and stuff. So we came up with a list. We both kind of got a list of 10 with maybe one honorable mention of classic movies. Mine are in kind of no particular order. So I'll kick it off with one classic film, and I guess work my way down or work my way up here. One of my classic films that I will list as a classic film is from 1956, and it's been a stage play. It was a stage play first before it was a movie, and they still perform it to this day. And you may be familiar with it. It's called The Bad Seed.
Ooh.
That movie, I saw it as a kid, and it stuck with me for years, and I saw it as an adult, and I still love it. And they've remade it, and they did a sequel to it, and they remade it with other little young actresses. But that movie is so chilling without showing anything chilling. I mean, The Bad Seed, about the little girl she's just a bad seed. She's evil. Everything she does is from a selfish, sociopathic. She's an early sociopath in the making, and she's dishonest. She lies. She even murders a kid in it in 1956. They didn't show the murder, but it's told how she did it, and she got caught. Very movie stuck with me because I'm like, oh man, this is I never want to be this kind of kid, and it stuck to me to this day. So, have you seen the original film, The Bad Seed?
I have not.
Fantastic movie. There's a scene that's so well done in that movie because she lives in this apartment complex. I don't know where they live, but it's like a high-rise apartments, and they have a maintenance guy there who's kind of he talks like this. He's kind of like a goofball guy, and she doesn't like him because he's found out what she's done, and he's gonna bust her and tell her parents and the authorities and everything. So when she finds out, he lives in the basement of this apartment, and that's back in the old days when they had basements that were heated with furnaces and stuff like that. They would supply heat for the whole building. You know, they still do that now sometimes. Well, he'd sleep down there on a bed of hay and straw because he's kind of like just a very kind of a derelict
Simple
person
guy.
that lives down there. So what she does one night, she goes down there, and she causes the furnace. She turns it up a little too much or does something, and starts a fire while he's asleep. Then she walks out very quietly and locks the door so he can't get out from the outside. So what happens is he catches on fire. You never see any of this, but here's how the director shot it. He's on fire, and they have to break this small window so he can jump out like onto the ground and start running around. All you see is the mom of this little girl, and you hear this guy running around. You hear the audio of him running out in the yard of the apartments, screaming while he's on fire, and you're watching her. The camera stays on her the whole time, and she's watching him in horror and listening to the screams. And you hear the other people going, put him out, find something, get some water, do something, he's dying. He's like, ah! It's just a terror scream of what a human being would make when they're on fire. And it's all camera stays on her because they can't show it in 1956. They're not going to show that in this movie. But the way they shot it, you still feel the entire horrible death of this guy. They put the fire out, but it's too late. He's dead. And it's all shown on her face watching it. And it's a powerful movie, The Bad Seed, 1956. There's one on my list right now as a classic movie, and it is a classic film. And it's a stage play. I considered directing it once back in the day when I was looking at stage plays and stuff. And what's funny is at the end of the film, after they go through all the stuff that she's done, it's one of those old films, so they bring everybody out. They do a curtain call at the end of the movie even. The cast comes out and bows on the cinema screen.
Wow.
And says,
That's weird.
so-and-so is blah, blah, blah. So-and-so is blah, blah, blah. And they come out and take their bow. At the end of the curtain call, before the movie completely ends, the woman that plays her mom takes the little girl who plays the bad seed and does what everybody wanted her to do in the film. She puts her over her knee and starts spanking her at the end, and then the credits, and it's over. And I thought that was a fun ending to that.
That's cool.
The bad seed. Well, let's hit on yours when we come back after the top of the hour. We're going to take a break. And I know you got a list. And we may match on some of these, because we always do, whether it's scary movies and Halloween or war films or 4th of July Independence Day type films. We always, you and I, Walt, we usually have some of the same ones, and we have different ones, which kind of makes the other one of us go, oh, that's on his list. I need to check that movie out.
I like it.
Speaking on there, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll do a little On This Day in History, too, and we'll take your calls, too, if you want to call in and tell us a couple of classic movies that you've got on your list, because it was Classic Movie Day. And I've got a lot. Movies are our life. Entertainment. It's pop culture. I'm your Retro Radio Rocket Man.
And now, these messages.
Hey, here's Better Cheddar's Crackers, San Francisco style. Better Cheddar's, sourdough baked right in, delicious tasting Better Cheddar's, the San Francisco style. Snack thin. Nabisco takes the great taste of cheddar, bakes in real sourdough, so you get Better Cheddar's. Light, thin, delicious. Ooh, Better Cheddar's, the San Francisco style. Snack thin, Better Cheddar's. Nabisco.
Isn't the color a little dark?
Believe me, you'll get used to it.
These days, it's pretty hard to get things done your way. But not at Burger King.
2 Whoppers and 2 chocolate shakes.
Could we have the Whoppers with extra ketchup on them? Sure.
See, Burger King doesn't make all its delicious 100% pure beef hamburgers ahead of time. You want your Whopper built some special way, you get it without a lot of waiting.
Have it your way, Burger King.
Stand by to receive our transmission.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Oh, that's what it's called, what I'm doing. I'm broadcasting. We got limited time today, so I'm going to get right into it. Let's do a little On This Day in History. Today is May the 20th. On This Day in History, 1891, the first public display of Thomas Edison's prototype kinescope to members of the National Federation of Women's Club was presented. It was an early motion picture exhibition. So it's a device designed for films to be viewed by one person at a time through a peephole viewer window is how they looked at it back then. So thank Thomas Edison for all the things that we're talking about on our classic movie list today, because today's the day he first premiered that piece of equipment to look at. Now later on, people would watch movies through a peephole in certain little seedy areas that we won't get into. So it kind of went back to that for some things, but that's a whole
you
other
and I had that
horrible problem.
version turned into a toy with our Fisher Price. That's not the little ViewMaster, but we had the little cartridges where you could spin and you look through and you could watch a little snippet of a cartoon
with no audio.
No audio.
It was great.
But you could visually see it move.
I had one called one of my cartridges I remember well. It was the little short that Disney did called 13. It was the Ghosts, where they go Ghostly Manor or something, where Pluto, Goofy, and Mickey go to this house where ghosts are there, and they start playing tricks on them and stuff. And I do remember that very well.
I had the Three Little Pigs
and Sesame Street. Yep, Three Little Pigs. I think my cousin had that one, but they were great. They were like our little movies first before we could have movies. Today on This Day in History. 1973, the 25th Emmy Awards, the Waltons, All in the Family, and Mary Tyler Moore win big at the Emmy Awards in 1973. That was 50 years ago. 1980, drummer Peter Criss from Kiss quits the band on 1980. And I thought he was with Kiss longer than that. Peter Criss is the guy that dressed up like the Cat, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he went on to... He was their drummer, right?
Yes.
He was mostly the drummer. And he sung Beth. The single...
Look at you! You know something other than Elliot...
yeah.
That group.
Yeah.
Say it! Peter Frampton.
Peter Frampton.
Kept trying to say ELO, and L kept wanting to come out first.
Your brain got ahead of your mouth again. That happens.
LOL.
I heard is this true about Kiss? I heard that when sometimes later on, because the other members of the band hated Beth because it's like a ballad, but it was a hit for them, and they said, well, when he would perform Beth, they all would leave the stage and let him sing it. Was that true? And he never.
Okay, get your little solo spotlight, grab your acoustic guitar, go up there and weep, and we'll be back when we want to play some rock.
I will say this: when you listen to Beth, I think it's a nice song.
It is a nice
song. But
song.
when you listen to Beth, and you hear Peter Criss sing, you can see that as a singer, he's a great drummer.
He's a very good drummer.
By the way, 1983 on this day, 40 years ago, Let's Dance, talk about music. Let's Dance by David Bowie was number 1 on the Billboard charts 40 years ago today in history. I remember that album.
Why does it sound like the 80s doesn't sound as bad as the 70s? It's only 10 years difference, but when you play the 73 is 50 years ago, I'm like, then you go, but hey, Let's Dance. I'm like, oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
And then I remind myself, no, it's 40.
40. But I remember the 80s a little better than 1973, though.
A lot of good memories of the 80s.
Also in 1983, Every Breath You Take single released by The Police. That was the Billboard Song of the Year in 1983.
Great song.
Believe it or not, 40.
Back in the 80s,
years
you could
ago.
actually get a hit for stalking somebody.
Right, and people that wanted, and people did, people wanted to use that song at their wedding, as their wedding song. I'm like, have you listened to the lyrics really closely?
Pay attention to what he's talking about.
It's a beautiful song. I'm like, but there's a little more than that. You have to, you're actually giving a message here. It's really cool.
You may need to question yourself if you want to have that at your wedding.
Are you going to get married if he really follows you around like that?
Oh, I'll be watching you.
Every breath you take. Oh, I gotta get this ready. Today, on this day in history, in 1986, let's go to CBS and find out what was going to air on CBS on this day in 1986.
Yabba dabba doo. Yabba dabba doo.
Tuesday, Harvey Korman, Tim Conway, and Vanna White are yabba dabba doing it for the Flintstones 25th anniversary celebration.
Right, on this day in history, that's when it aired. This Flintstones 25th anniversary on CBS on this day in history in 1986. So there you go. We got another, I think 25 years later, they did a 50 anniversary. Imagine that, 25 more is 50.
The Flintstones came out initially in 1961.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? In prime time, just like The Simpsons. It was
we should probably go get a pack of Winstons and smoke a pack.
Pack of Winstons. I should play that spot. 770-386-1450 is our number. Someone's on the line right now. Let's find out who it is. Hello, it's BK on the air.
What's up, Doc?
Hey, it's Commander Clark. Hey, Commander Clark. How you doing, Commander? Are you calling in to add to your voice to the favorite classic films? Give me a couple of classic movies.
Yeah, I am.
You woke up just specifically for that?
Yes, I did. I expect my payment very soon.
Your payment, okay.
It'll be double what you usually get.
That's right. Triple. No, I'll be generous. It'll be triple what it usually is. Well, hit me.
But anyway, yeah,
hit me with a couple.
Movies.
Hit me with a couple.
I know those. I was going to say, and I don't know if anybody said it, original King Kong.
The original King Kong. That may or may not be on my list, but we've been talking about him a little bit at a time as we're going on. King Kong is a fantastic choice. It is a classic film.
Oh, yeah.
It meets all the criteria. Groundbreaking special effects for the time, 1933, to have that stop motion the way they did, and it scared a lot of people back then. It was scary.
Argue it's pretty iconic.
It's a scary movie for them back then, too.
Yep. Oh, it is one of my favorites, like adventure films.
Great choice.
And then maybe something more recent, but not really. How about Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Oh, that would be considered a classic film.
Huh.
It's recent for us, but not maybe for kids.
That may pop up in my modern. I broke it into classic, and what I would consider modern classic, only because they're still old, but they're more recent.
So just to let you know, Alan and I both may have maybe have one or both those films on our list too. So yeah,
okay.
Good
Great
choices.
minds think alike.
Good choices.
It might come up again later in the show.
That's right. Good choices. Classic films. We love them.
Oh yeah, I mean, but Casablanca.
Oh yeah,
there's just so many.
I could sit down and make 50. That'd be great. 50. Just because they're not on my list of 10 today doesn't mean I don't like them. And we talked earlier about how just because it's a classic film, that doesn't even mean we like it, because neither one of us in this room were that big of a fan of Gone with the Wind. It's a classic film, though. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It is a classic film.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
All right, buddy.
And I'm not a big fan of it either.
There you go. See, there's three of us that are going to get killed now by somebody that likes Gone with the Wind. So there you go.
All right. Shows just how intelligent this group is.
That's right. We're all linked together. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate you calling in and let us know a couple.
Bye.
Okay, no problem.
Okay,
Talk
buddy.
to you later.
All right, bye. Commander Clark calling in to check
we
in on
up
classic
against a
film.
break?
We are another
Dear
break.
Lord.
Just flying by. There's only like.
Could you slow it down? Stop putting beer in the tank.
I'm trying to go
We're
faster.
supposed to drink it.
I'm trying to go faster so we can get all this in. I don't think we're ever going to get it in time, and I'm not even done with On This Day in History. Today in 1988, Willow premiered, the George Lucas movie directed by Ron Howard that I didn't think it was not a classic film. Sorry, Willow is not a classic movie in my opinion. In 1989, the premiere of a sports fantasy drama film, Field of Dreams, came out on this day in history. I forgot that was Burt Lancaster's last movie.
It was great.
And I'd forgotten he was in it.
Great movie.
And we'll have more on this day in history when we come back.
What a difference. Blockbuster Video.
I've never seen 10,000 tapes in one store.
There's so much kid stuff.
And I can keep them for 3 evenings.
Now this is a video store.
Ordinary video stores don't even come close to Blockbuster Video. You've just got to see it to know what we mean.
Wow. Wow.
Wow, what a difference. Blockbuster Video.
Come discover the Blockbuster difference.
Cookie's life is like a taste and a feeling you like. Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola. Come on, girl. Gotta share a Coke with you. Let the feeling through. You wanna live a little bit more. That's what the taste of Coke is for. Cookie's life. Everybody wants a little life. Coca-Cola. Cookie's life.
Gather round the Jiffy Pop. Gather round the Jiffy Pop. The Jiffy Pop.
The Jiffy Pop.
Gather round the Jiffy Pop. The family fun treat.
And here's great fun, a Jungle Book Magic Picture Kit, free in specially marked packages of Jiffy Pop popcorn. Each kit's a different scene from Walt Disney Productions' full-length feature, Jungle Book. 4 fun scenes in all.
Here comes the Jiffy Pop.
Fresh, hot, and delicious every time because you make it yourself.
Gather round the Jiffy Pop. The family fun treat.
What are you people? On dope?
Hey, we're back. It's BK on the air here. Let's keep on going with On This Day in History because there's a lot more to go. 1990 on this day in history, May the 20th, the Hubble Space Telescope sends its first photographs from space.
Remember how big that was?
Yeah, wasn't it Golden Arches that they saw? Was that in the picture?
I think
it was
McDowell's.
Like and 1993 on this day in history, the 274th episode, the final episode of a sitcom aired in 1993. You want to take a stab at what I would call it an iconic sitcom at this point?
Cheers?
Cheers. You're exactly right. On NBC, the final episode after 274 episodes. Buddy, when shows get up into the 200 episodes and 300 and stuff, and The Simpsons is way on up there, that's a major accomplishment, by the way. Birthdays on this day in history. Today is Jimmy Stewart's birthday today. He died in 1997. Today is Joe Cocker's birthday, British soulful singer from England. He died in 2014. Man, he could belt out. When I heard Joe Cocker sing and then I finally saw him, I'm like, he looks nothing like he sounds. He just doesn't look like he sounds. Today is Cher's birthday today. You want to take a stab at how old Cher is today? Let's take a stab at it. How old does she look and how old is she really is the thing. Well,
how old is her cosmetic surgery?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I'm going to guess she's 76.
She's 77. You got it right.
Close.
One off. Today is Dave Thomas's birthday. No, not the man
Wendy's?
who founded Wendy's.
Aww.
This is the comedian actor from SCTV, Strange Brew, and Grace Under Fire. Funny guy. He was the one of the on Strange Brew. He was not Rick Moranis. He was the other guy.
Right.
Dave Thomas.
That's how you explain it.
That's right. He's from SCTV.
He's not Rick Moranis.
Right. Today's John Billingsley's birthday today. Actor. He played Dr. Phlox on Star Trek Enterprise. Very good actor. He was very good in that role, and he's done some other guest spots here and there. And today is Mindy Kahn's birthday today. American actress. Her claim to fame is she was Natalie on The Facts of Life.
Oh. Mindy Rathov?
What's with a C, not with an H.
Dang
It's C-O-H-N, not K-A-H-N.
Wouldn't that be Cone?
Mindy. Or is it Cone? Maybe it is. Wrath of Cone.
It's the Wrath of Cone. The Wrath of the Coneheads.
I was told on the break that I pronounced steel equipment tools wrong, and I said still, and you said steel. So
you were thinking about
like,
where I go to drink.
Well,
still.
Either that or I was hooked on phonics and trying to spell it out like it looked. So sorry.
That's how I would have pronounced it.
Not still. It's always National Something Day, but today is Armed Forces Day. Today on May the 20th, it's Armed Forces Day. We celebrate all 5 branches of the United States military. Is there 6 now? Is Space Force considered an armed forces?
Yes, it is.
So would that be 6, or is 5 including that?
No, 6, because you count
So
the
we
Coast
need
Guard.
to change that to 6.
It should
They
be.
only said 5 in the article, so I'm like, it should be. I don't know. I have to look up and see if Space Force is considered an armed forces. Are they more exploration? I don't know what. Maybe they're the Starfleet.
To boldly go.
Starfleet. Hey, even Starfleet was armed with phasers and photon torpedoes.
Generally, you include the Coast Guard, the 5 military branches,
Right.
but
they're
the
all
Coast Guard's armed.
Yeah, right. Well, I need to look up. Let's look. I'll look that up when I'm home today.
I
see
want
if
to
they're actually
believe the
considered
Space
that
Force
way.
is armed. I want
Yeah.
them to have their 40-watt lasers.
Oh, right. All I know is they're really cool. I like their emblem and everything. I think it's a cool thing. Everybody made fun of them. I'm like, well, how could you make fun of that? They're the Space Force. That just sounds awesome. I love that. What are you? Are you the Army, Marines, Air Force? No, I'm with the Space Force. That says a whole new ring now about it. If you told me back when I was a kid, I
you
would
guys are
never
worried
thought
about
that.
the land, air, and sea. We're worried about all of space.
Yeah. You see the Earth? See the Earth from the satellite photo? We're worried about everything past that.
Right.
That's what we're looking after.
We're here to protect the Earth.
Oh, no. Look what other day it is today. Boy, you're going to love this one. I'm surprised you didn't know about this. Today is World Whiskey Day today.
Well, I now have an activity for the afternoon.
Well, you do it anyway, so what's the big deal?
Well, now I'll have a reason
You
to
can
make
kick back
toast.
a couple of more. That's right.
You know,
the first evidence of distilling whiskey, the essential process for creating whiskey, dates back to Mesopotamia around 2000 BC, and it says it wasn't until 100 AD that Alexander of Aphrodisiaca, or whatever that is. I don't know why you say that, but that's how I'm going to say it. Created the first recorded instance of distillation. So there you go. How about the
Thanks,
world?
Alfred.
Not just National Whiskey Day; it's World
Whiskey
Day. So if you live anywhere in the world today,
dude, it's that
kick
important.
one back.
It can't be just the U.S.
Now you can't just put that on the U.S. only.
That's
for Whiskey Day.
And you know, whiskey is actually a very wide range. There's within the
I know.
whiskey family, you have bourbon. You have
Oh, I know
Scotch.
that, yeah.
You've got blends. You've got all of that in general is whiskey.
All tastes like lighter fluid to me when I drink it. I'm
Well,
like,
you're
man, I
drinking
could
the
pour
wrong kind.
I could pour this on a wound and it would sterilize it really, really well. Maybe you can burn that in a motorcycle. Oh no, that'd be a big waste,
I
wouldn't
would
it?
never. I don't care if I'm lost in the desert and that's the only thing we have to take off. I'm still no.
I don't have any lighter fluid. I don't have anything to start the charcoal. Here, pour some of this on there. No, don't waste that. Don't do
Don't
that.
waste good whiskey.
Let's go back to our classic film list. We were going to go to yours next. What is your film list that you got coming up? Do you have a Post-it note on your coffee cup
Yeah,
for
for
this?
both of them.
That is hilarious. I have never seen you do that. He's got a Post-it note on his coffee
flip it
cup
because
to
I
tell
made
him-
the two lists, which is what I thought the assignment was going to be.
because he put it on something important to him that he know he'd have
I'm
in his
not
hand.
going to lose it.
It's warm.
What I did is I looked at genres because it's so hard, and I didn't want to stay in one genre. So I was
Right.
like, okay, I'm going to
I
pick
didn't do that either,
what
yeah.
I think of as a classic, but also like so. I'm going to go to my top one
Right.
in war, classic war movie.
Okay, gotcha.
There's a lot of great war movies.
Oh, there are. Yeah, I do.
But to me, and it's a classic because it's 53 years old.
Wow, I know exactly what it is.
Came out the year of my birth in the year of our Lord, 1970. Patton.
Patton. That is 100% a classic film.
If-
And what a film it is.
If you have not, if people out there listening have never seen it, you all know it. Everyone
Sure,
has
yeah.
heard of it.
The quotes
If
and
I even just
things.
put, it's been mocked in even modern cartoons, coming up in front of a
Sure.
big American flag
Oh,
and
yeah.
making a speech. If you have never seen Patton, something wrong.
It was mocked in Smokey the Bandit Part 3. Sheriff Buford T. Justice comes out in front of the flag and
Right.
is talking like Patton. It's parodied everywhere.
So
Yeah.
that's one of my classic. I've got
We'll-
modern and I've got classic.
We'll
classic.
check off a few here as we go. Next up on my list from 1981, like I say, these are kind of in order, but I go up to probably my favorite one here, Excalibur from 1981.
Ooh.
To me,
Great fantasy
okay, I'm gonna
classic.
say something right now about Excalibur that is no one can argue with me about. It is, to this date, the absolute best movie about King Arthur and the legend of King Arthur that they've ever made. I don't think they've ever made a better movie. They've made more expensive ones. They may have made ones that made more money. But as far as adapting that story, La Morte d'Arthur, the name of the French book, into a motion picture that's has the staying power quoted. Heck, even the spell in it was used in Ready Player One. There's another movie that transcends where its own film. That to me is and that is actually one of my favorite motion pictures of all time. I can watch Excalibur over and over again and saw it in a theater when I shouldn't have. It was rated R. And
Well,
I
that
didn't check
opening
my
where
ID.
he's like,
and I
Uther.
could see. Oh, yeah, there's a few scenes in it. Yeah.
You want to do what, Uther? I want to have the
and
queen
it's- and
across the way.
It's rated R. So
Make me look like her husband.
Excalibur, directed
Yeah.
by John Boorman, early Liam Neeson in Excalibur, and Patrick Stewart is in it too. Back before they were
Did
big
that
stars.
totally unknown kid ever do anything else ever than
The guy that played Arthur, Nigel Terry, he went on to do stuff in England. He was in a television series in America called Wizards and Warriors.
I remember that was the big controversy. Like, you've got this massive character,
Yep.
and nobody knew who he was, and
Yep.
he really didn't do a whole lot, at least not in American cinema after.
Right.
Like, just he did this iconic role.
Yes. And managed
go?
to pull it off by being the young Arthur and through makeup and stuff, being the older Arthur, and you bought it. He didn't look fake. He actually looked like he aged, and they did a great job. So Excalibur's next up on my list. Fantastic movie. What's next up
All right,
on yours?
I'm going to go
Classic.
through all my classic ones. This one, to me, goes in the drama category. It is one of my all-time favorites, still to this day. We'll watch it anytime, even if it's a little hokey toward the end. But Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And in honor of Jimmy Stewart's birthday today,
That's
it's
right.
a
It's his
perfect one
birthday.
to add.
What year do you remember the year on that one?
1939.
39. I did not know. I
You
thought that
wanna
came out in
know-
the 50s.
Think about all the movies that came out in 39 that are all
Oh, yeah.
classics.
Oh, yeah.
Because we do agree Gone with the Wind.
Yep.
We would agree Wizard of Oz.
You're right, because Commander Clark brought it
And
up.
then we have Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
39 was a big year for films.
I think there's two more if we look it up that you're like, holy crap, how did Hollywood in 39 make this many movies that are all like at the same level of classic?
And it did. It was a good year.
So that's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
A very good choice. Now, was that ever done as a stage play? Did they do
No,
that?
I don't think it's ever.
They did 12 Angry Men was a stage
12
play.
Angry
That's
Men
right.
was a stage play.
And it was a much later film.
That one could have made my list, but I went with...
And if someone has it on their list, they wouldn't be wrong.
They would not.
My next classic movie that I love, that I had to put on the list, was a Ray Harryhausen special effects beautiful extravaganza called Jason and the Argonauts, which happens to be one of Tom Hanks'
Okay, so that's
favorite
iconic,
films.
and I didn't even think about it.
It was amazing. First time I'd ever seen since King Kong, and it had been in other places. That stop motion where you're fighting something that's not even on the screen. It's added later, and you had to match up your fighting where you move things. I mean, Phil Tippett for Empire Strikes Back, even the Star Wars films used it before CGI came in.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting thing about stop motion, that was originally what they were going to do with Jurassic Park when they were submitting their special effects
Well,
tests.
they had what the newer version, they called it Go Motion,
Yep,
to try to
which looked
fake
better.
the blur.
Yep, it looked better. But when they brought in the CGI T-Rex and looked at it, Spielberg was like,
But
I'm
a couple
going
of
with that.
upstarts who were told specifically, do not do this, and they did it anyway.
Yeah, thank goodness they did.
Kinda.
Too. But Jason of the Argonauts is a fantastic adventure. The special effects, the action, the score by Bernard Herrmann, the guy who scored many movies, including Psycho. Great movie. Remember seeing it as a kid, and I could go home and watch it right now and have
Even
just as much fun.
the trailer, watching a guy fighting skeletons, I would have dreams as a kid of skeleton warriors coming to fight me.
Which they paid homage
Maybe
to,
that's
by the
why
way.
I play D&D now.
They paid homage to that in The Mummy when Brandon Fraser's fighting the
Let
skeletons.
me, since I already mentioned it and Commander Clark mentioned it, I'll get another one of my classics. This falls in the fantasy category, Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz. Okay, I'll second that. We're coming up on a break, but I'll second it because it's on my list too.
How do you not have
1939, The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, it's a little music, but I mean, let's face it.
Oh,
a
who cares?
fantastical journey, and everyone knows everything about it if you've never even seen it. You still know about the Tin Man, you know about the Golden Road, Follow the Yellow Brick Road,
Yeah.
Ruby Slippers.
How much? And I got a Wizard of Oz story coming up. We got time about a theft that happened not too long ago that they found who did it. Wizard of Oz. Every year it would air on CBS. We would watch it. We're like, Wizard of Oz
It
is
was a
coming on tonight.
family event.
Gotta
Sit
watch
down.
it.
Wizard of Oz is
Popcorn.
coming on.
That's great. Speaking of there, we'll have more when we come back. More of our movies too.
We'll return after these announcements.
Here's to good friends. Tonight is kind of special.
How you holding up? I'm all right. You want to go for 10 miles? If we make it, I'll buy you a beer. If we make it, I'll buy you a Lone Brow.
When you want the taste of a truly great American beer, tonight, let it be Lowenbrow.
Tonight, let it be Lowenbrow.
Hey, world, who do you take traveling?
MasterCard and me.
Who do you take shopping?
MasterCard and me.
Who do you take to dinner?
MasterCard and me.
And me.
MasterCard and me. We can do it all.
MasterCard's the only credit card I really need. Anywhere.
MasterCard and me, we can do it all.
The house began to pitch. The kitchen took a slitch. It landed on the Wicked Witch. In the middle of a ditch.
Toto? not in Kansas anymore.
It lands in theaters everywhere.
See the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
For the first time, digitally restored
These things must be done delicately.
and remastered in digital stereo sound.
Well, that makes a difference.
With all the songs,
There's no place like home.
the magic,
I am Oz.
Follow the yellow brick road.
the fun.
Follow the yellow brick road.
Generations have waited to see the most beloved movie of the century on the big screen. And
Toto too?
Toto 2.
We represent the Lollipop Kid. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too.
Put 'em up, put 'em up.
If ever a whiz there was, the Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard of Oz Special Edition.
Because of the wonderful
Digitally restored and remastered in digital stereo sound. You've never seen Oz like this.
Yes, and it's on both of our lists of our favorite classic motion pictures of all time. Classic Film Day on May the 16th, where we're telling you what our classic movies are today with PK on the air. That movie's on both of our lists from 1939. I can watch The Wizard of Oz today, Alan, and I'm still amazed by the effects. I mean, some of it looks a little dated. It doesn't look like CGI and beautiful effects, but for the time of 1939, that movie had, like, amazing special effects.
The tornado always got me for as long as I was involved in movies. Like, how did they do that?
And when I found out what it was, I'm like, really? It's like a hose, like a pantyhose or something that they have connected, and they're just putting stuff through it with a wind machine or whatever, and just it's like a rear projection thing. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, you couldn't tell me that's what it was. It looks like a tornado back there destroying things in their field.
Mm-hmm.
The way it was projected.
Totally believed it.
And the makeup, the Cowardly Lion, all the creatures that they encounter. The flying monkeys are still creepy, kind of creepy
kids today.
And you know, they did a sequel to it in 82 or 84 called Return to Oz. It was pretty creepy because it was based on the next book in Frank Baum's
isn't it like 100
book
books?
series? Yeah, it was a creepy
Isn't
sequel.
Wizard of Oz like several stories?
I don't know how many of it is.
Together?
It is, but I can't remember how many actual books Frank Baum wrote. And then Sam Raimi did one called The Powerful Oz, The Great and Powerful Oz.
That
which
was
came
actually
out
a pretty
not too
cool
long
flick.
ago.
That was like the
it was okay. I don't know why I didn't like it as much as I thought I would, but it was
maybe because
interesting sequel.
I had no expectation for it.
And Raimi is a well directed because it was Sam Raimi. So yeah. So with the Wizard of Oz, I won't have to even talk about that when I get up to it. Who went last? You did, right? Because you talked about the Wizard of Oz.
And you jumped on it.
Okay, so my next on my list, again, they're not in any kind of order. We'll go a little more modern this time. 1975, How Can Jaws Not Be on my list? And we may match on that one.
I put that on what I consider my modern classic, right? But we don't have to mention Jaws twice because we said it once.
And as much as we talk about Jaws,
the movie that it should be of all
we could go without talking about it for a year and still would have talked about it enough because we talk about it a lot. We really do.
One
what
of
a
the
movie
best
that
movies
is.
ever made, and it is a classic. I put that in my, quote, horror, but it's also action, but it's my horror movie on the modern classic.
How do you classify Jaws?
That's the hardest
thing.
It's
a drama. It's a thriller.
It's got some funny lines.
And I would say Jaws, to me, when I was a kid, I'm like, oh, it's a horror movie. I'm like, when I'm an adult, I'm more like, it's actually less of a horror and more
there is some horrific stuff
Yes, there
in
are
it.
horrific stuff. And it's not about a fictitious Jason,
Right.
Freddy Krueger thing. It's about an animal.
Right.
Wreaking havoc, just doing what it does.
Right.
So
Eating, sleeping, making little sharks.
So we both mentioned Jaws. Enough said on that because Jaws speaks for itself. Next up on your list.
Next on my classic list, and this went in my music category, which I couldn't find one on a modern, but I did like one of my few musicals. But I still, to this day, talk about getting around the TV and watching it when it came out every year on television.
Oh, I think I know what it is.
The Sound of Music.
The Sound of Music. And if anybody says that's a classic, I will say yes, it is. If anyone says it's not, I will disagree with them.
They would be wrong.
That was a great Robert Wise directed movie, legendary director along with a legendary movie, and Julie Andrews. How can you go wrong with that woman? She was so multi-talented.
Still love them. And I'm not a musical person, and I know all the songs. My wife and I will sing the songs.
Yes.
Our kids were
some of them.
Talk about being
transcend that.
Across generations. Our kids grew up watching it, love the movie still as adults to this day. Yeah. Classic. Sound of Music.
Some musicals, and I'm not a big musical guy either, but some of them transcend the I don't like musical things. They're just great movies, and they're so in your head.
Yes.
They're so welded in there and soldered from being a kid.
And maybe that's it. That Sound of Music had a lot of dialogue and a lot of story, and then the songs made sense because she was teaching him about music and the appreciation of music and the artistry that is music.
Yeah, and for me growing up, Sound of Music, I think everybody necessarily considers it one, but we tended to watch it during Christmas for some reason. It snuck in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Maybe that's when they aired it because we didn't have a copy of it. Yeah, so it was a great movie. Great choice. And what year was The Sound of Music again?
That's 67 or 60.
Okay, you didn't put the year down.
I didn't have the year. Sorry.
I know it's in the early 60s. Okay, next up on my list, Battles with Jaws with me for my number one film of all time. It is a classic movie, the first Star Wars film, Star Wars, 1977, episode 4.
We won't have to mention Star Wars
Good.
on my modern classics.
Kick us up.
How do you not, when it comes to fantasy, the other one was Wizard of Oz, how could you not argue that Star Wars was the Wizard of Oz of our generation?
It was, hands down. It had to be, because when that movie, talk about, okay, does it meet all the criteria? Of course. Iconic everything, groundbreaking special effects. We talked about that with the Wizard of Oz. That's a good way to put it. It was kind of the Wizard of Oz of our generation. I would argue that Jurassic Park is the Star Wars of a later generation because it did the same thing. It did the same thing.
Says, she goes, Star Wars is to you is Jurassic Park to me.
That's not a
She goes,
bad
I will
statement.
never know what that's like to see. She goes, I wouldn't know what Star Wars is like, but watching Jurassic Park, I was like, I didn't realize what I was seeing was history.
Yeah.
And I realized how that movie set the tone for everything that followed, all the digital CGI, monster, and visual effects.
And she must have been enjoying the heck out of it while she was sitting there in the
theater.
theater.
Well, it's going to make an honorable
mention.
mention. I'll just tell you when we get to my modern.
Good.
I got two more left on my classic.
Wars.
This one fell in the horror or suspense. Psycho. I got to have an Alfred Hitchcock nod, and as I mentioned ironically earlier, even if you've never seen Psycho, you know Psycho. You know the music, you know the iconic stabbing scene,
so
you
funny.
know everything.
Indulge me for a minute. That's next on my list is Psycho, on my list from 1960. So let's take a visit and remember Psycho then, why don't we?
Here we have a quiet little motel, when in fact it has now become known as the scene of the crime.
You have a vacancy?
Oh, we have 12 vacancies.
You know, this is the first place that looks like it's hiding from the world.
I think that we're all in our private traps, clamped in them. And none of us can ever get out.
Is anyone at home? Oh, that must be my mother.
Is anything wrong?
Am I acting as if there's something wrong?
She's not missing so much as she's run away.
Put me down. Mother! Oh, God! Mother!
What are you running away from?
She looked like a wrong one to you?
It's not as if she were a maniac.
How many times has Psycho been parodied and talked about in
the
history?
fact of the matter is, Hitchcock, giving us the before M. Night Shyamalan, we had Alfred Hitchcock,
who did it much better, Alfred Hitchcock. But yeah, I would argue.
All right, let me give you
Psycho,
which we'll cover quickly because I tried to do, like I said, genres.
Right, but we both match with Psycho.
Comedy. Is there a better comedy of all time than Blazing Saddles?
Wow, I would not argue that. If someone said Blazing Saddles, and we know what big Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder fans we are, you could even say Young Frankenstein is a classic. Of course it is.
If only there was a show about
If only there was a podcast. But yeah, Blazing Saddles was one of the best comedies ever put on film.
Yes,
in our
without a doubt.
lives.
And it's classic because it teaches you something about yourself. That's one of the things that some critics say. You should learn a little something about humanity yourself. And I thought,
perfect time to tell you, go out and look for the Wilder Ride podcast. And Alan and us, we broke it down a minute at a time. Blazing Saddles funny. We'll have more when we come back.
We will return after these messages.
Let's face it, the dollar just isn't what it used to be. That's why people like you and me, we got to be careful to get the most value for our money. That's why I come here, to Taco Bell. I can feed my whole family for $5.59. 2 tacos, 2 bean burritos, 2 tostadas, pintos and cheese, soft drinks. Only $5.59. Like they're saying, Taco Bell. What a meal, what a deal. No kidding.
Taco Bell.
Yodelay-oo, Swiss Miss Instant Cocoa. What's the best way to start your day?
Give a little yodel.
Swiss Miss has lots of rich chocolatey cocoa and milk already in it. So all you do is add hot water and give a little yodel. Okay, gang, what do you do for a warm-up break? Swiss Miss Instant Cocoa. Yodelay-oo.
You're listening to BK on the Air. This is Mrs. BK, and I'm not listening now because, well, I sleep in every Saturday morning. But I'll catch him later on the BK Escape Pod podcast. Now, back to that man of mine, BK on the Air.
A priceless treasure lies within anyone's grasp, but only one man knows where it is, who he's up against, and how to make it look easy. From the creators of Jaws and Star Wars comes a totally modern hero with a new age of adventure. Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That was one of the TV spots that played on television all over the place, but they'd put their local theaters at the end.
That is one of my modern classics. It's at the top of the list of my modern because
Raiders
it is
on your
iconic.
list.
It is known. It created a character everyone knows, and associations, the music, everyone has heard of Indiana Jones.
Yep, the whip, the fedora hat.
And it took let's face it, all the action movies of the 80s, you got to look back to the guys that kind of reinvigorated the serial actions. It was Raiders of the
Because
Lost Ark.
Spielberg and Lucas were big fans of the chapter plays in the old days, the hero going after the treasure and stuff. It was all influenced by that, and they just they updated it for the 80s, and it was a smash. We got a new one coming out just right around the corner, The Dial of Destiny. We'll find out if Indy has the staying power he did or is as good as he used to be with a different director. So that's going to be fun. Raiders did not make my list, but it made Commander Clark's list when he called in, and it is a classic movie.
I'll remind you very quick, the two we can skip over of mine. We already covered Jaws and Star Wars, but those were in the fantasy and horror categories for me.
Next up for me, 1933, Commander Clark actually mentioned it. King Kong, the original King Kong. I told him it was on my list, so we can skip over that one because we've already covered it, but it is an iconic film from the night, even before Gone with the Wind and those other ones from 39. This is 33, even further back.
My modern classic war movie, how can you not pick Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah, that's a classic now. And what year did it come out?
90.
Is there a year on there? I mean, it's much later. That's probably the latest movie you have on your list.
It was
isn't
before Jurassic Park because he was working on it, and then he was working on Jurassic Park and
Isn't that the latest
Schindler's
film?
List at the same time, which was 93. So
I'm going to find out because I can't remember.
I think it's 91. I want to say it's 91.
Let's find out because I've got a way to look at it here. Saving Private Ryan came out in 1998.
Oh,
yes, it was.
It was 8. I was off. It came out after.
So
that's my most recent movie.
That is on your list. That's what I thought. It was the most recent one.
But it's a classic.
The most recent movie on my list, year-wise, as far as classic goes, is 1981, would be Excalibur. I think that's the latest film, years-wise, that's on my top 10. I could easily fill out 50 of these classic films.
Saving Private Ryan is now 25 years old.
Yeah, how about that? How about that?
That hurts.
And when you have veterans sitting in that film feeling very emotional about the beginning because they went to the great extremes to get the sound effects even right, because these people that were actually on the beach back then watching that movie were greatly moved by it, I heard, and it affected them because they said, oh, that sounded just like that sound. I heard that. It sounded just like it. He went to great lengths to do that. Here's two more classics. The last two I'm going to mention are by the same director and star the same man, and how I cannot have these on my list. From 1938, The Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland. To me, to this day, they have never made a Robin Hood movie better than this one. This is a classic one. They've made some other pretty good ones, but to me, sometimes they'll make a better remake than the original sometimes, like with The Mummy or maybe with Dracula from Universal, but not this. To me, I can watch, again, another one of those movies I can sit down and watch anytime I want because he is such an adventurous film from Warner Brothers. And And Errol Flynn, I was just a big fan of his. I know his personal life was pretty shady sometimes, but what a Harrison Ford he was back in the day. That's who he was.
He was Indy before Indy.
He certainly was, and he played all types of characters. Western heroes.
All swashbuckling
things. Well, it could be the next film on my list. But you got another one to go?
Yeah, for me on the comedy, but I think this is I would call a modern classic, but
Yes.
everyone's heard of it. Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters is a classic. I would maybe in 1985 or 6 I wouldn't have called it that, but it has the legs, and it is a classic comedy.
And everyone knows it, everyone's heard of it, and because they've rebooted it with Afterlife, and we're going to get another one soon in that same world. This is a fantastic
they rebooted
movie.
it twice, but we won't talk about the other one.
Well, we're not going to talk about the ladies. They forgot about those.
But yeah, Ghostbusters is a classic comedy. It most certainly is, and it belongs right up there with Blazing Saddles. I mean, it's a classic comedy,
quotable, iconic.
I'm wondering if somebody
rewatchable.
Comedies are weird with me because I'm not a big comedy movie fan.
I'm not either.
It's hard for me to choose them, but when they're funny, and I like them. I wonder if someone said to me if I made a top 50 classic movie list and I've got Caddyshack on there, I don't know that I could argue with them that Caddyshack is not a classic.
It's pretty
comedy.
iconic.
It's quoted. It's parodied.
The gopher chase.
Yeah,
just Bill Murray going after the
there
gopher.
You go. A comedy.
It's
another
a
comedy
Cinderella
classic.
story.
All right, well, I've got one more on my list and one more honorable mention, but I'll do my number one. I guess one of my favorite, other than Star Wars being my favorite film of all time, it battling with Jaws being number one of all time movies of all time, not just classic. But I got to pick another Errol Flynn, Michael Curtiz directed masterpiece. Michael Curtiz directed The Adventures of Robin Hood and many films with Errol Flynn. Michael Curtiz also directed Casablanca, another classic movie that people love. What a great director he was. He also directed 1940 Errol Flynn in The Seahawk. If you've never seen the swashbuckling film The Seahawk, I know he did Captain Blood too. That's considered by some people better than The Seahawk, but The Seahawk has so much action in the way it was directed. They built these giant sea ships on the set at Warner Brothers that they had to use to have them swing across. They had to build these things to film them on and then intersperse them with shots of miniatures in the water, which looked fantastic for 1940. Watch The Seahawk. You won't be disappointed. It's probably my favorite Errol Flynn movie of all time, but it's a great classic. It's black and white. I know people won't watch black and white films, but it is a fantastic movie from Warner Brothers. I use that word fantastic a lot because that's what I mean to call it. Love The Seahawk.
Last one I have of the modern classics, and when I look back, I guess I need to thank Steven Spielberg for giving me my modern classics because this will be the fourth Steven Spielberg film, Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park.
On June 11th, dinosaurs and man, two species suddenly thrown back into the mix together.
Can I touch it?
Sure. How can we possibly have the slightest idea what to expect?
Universal Pictures presents a Steven Spielberg film, an adventure 65 million years in the making. Jurassic Park, rated PG-13. Special premiere tomorrow night. Starts Friday everywhere.
I start saying, where are you going on that? Close Encounters or Jurassic Park?
I could have picked Close Encounters, but I think Jurassic Park because it ushered in everything. We would not have the MCU.
Wow.
We would not have all the movies that we love and talk about now.
Certainly wouldn't have the effects.
Had that movie not worked.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure it would have come later, but we can say that's the time. Literally, we can look and go, movies changed with Jurassic Park.
I mean, we had computer effects before Jurassic Park, but not to that level of advanced looking.
It's still rewatchable to this day.
It is.
It crosses generations. I told you it's my daughter's version of Star Wars, and the fact that it can bond the two of us as a family to watch, and it's there with Raiders. We don't know what to watch. Oh, let's put the original Jurassic Park. We know we're going to love it. We're going to love the score. We're going to love the adventure. We're going to love the dinosaurs. Everything about it. It's a modern classic.
Let me tell you something about when Jurassic Park finally came out on home video. I watched it again, was just blown away because I saw it in a theater and I thought it was great.
I saw it like 5
to
times.
This day, to this day, it's an amazing scene. But when I first got on video, I watched it again. But I would go back with my videotape back in the day and watch the first encounter with the T-Rex scene over and over again. It was so suspenseful, so well done. The way he breaks out of that cage, those wires, and interacts with the car and hits it and stuff and scares the kids. I'm like, he's there. And in some shots, there was a giant T-Rex on the set.
It is so seamlessly well choreographed and edited.
Back and forth. when he turns around, blows his hat off with his snout, his hair, and he blows his hair out. That's one that's on the set.
If anybody goes, "Oh, that looks so fake," you are lying.
I don't know why you'd say that.
100% lying.
Those are troublemakers that just try to want to argue with you. That's who they are, because they don't believe it either. They really don't believe it. So, yeah. Well, we're getting closer to the end of the program. I do have one honorable mention. Is because I watched this movie one night as a kid and never forgot it. And they remade it, I think, back in the 90s or 2000s with Dennis Quaid, I think. And the movie's called Flight of the Phoenix from 1965. It's Jimmy Stewart's birthday day. Jimmy Stewart stars in it as well. And Richard Attenborough is in it. The director, the old man from Jurassic Park, is actually in this movie.
Look at the tie-ins.
As another tie-in. So when these men crash a plane in the middle of the desert, I think in Africa where they were, and they had to find some way to take that plane and rebuild it with just one engine and just get it together with what they had and try to fly it out there, because they're all so far away from stuff. If they try to walk anywhere, they're going to die because they're so deep into the desert, and they got to fly out of that desert in that plane and save their lives. It's a drama. It's a character study. You find out human flaws, how you act under desperate situations. Jimmy Stewart's great in it, by the way. He was great in everything. But Flight of the Phoenix, if you've never seen the original one, it is a great movie from 1965, and it'll always stay with me. I didn't see the remake. I never watched the remake.
Remake was good.
They do it. I need to watch it.
I enjoyed it a lot. I didn't think
same
I would.
basic story.
Yeah,
they did. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Modern take, obviously, with a little bit more better visual.
Was the twist in the film the same as the original? The guy never told him he's a model airplane designer.
Yeah,
is it the same thing? Okay,
it's
good.
Exactly the same story.
I'm not spoiling anything. The movie's like really old, so. But yeah, it was a great. I couldn't believe that.
You've never actually built a real plane? Well, in principle, it's the same. It's like, but you built models.
He's like, I'm just making it bigger than a smaller one. It'll
Dennis
still
Quaid
work.
is fantastic, by the way.
He's a good actor.
About an actor who has seasoned with time. He's just really
Dennis
good.
Quaid is a Harrison Ford type. He could play just about anything. You could picture yourself sitting with Dennis Quaid having a drink and just talking to him and stuff. He just seems like that way. I don't know if he's that way really. But, yeah, classic films.
Well, have you seen, while we're shifting gears quickly, have you seen the ad campaign that he and others are saying, bring Hollywood to Texas? Because he's from Texas.
I have not seen that. Really?
So all these actors, including, and Dennis Quaid did a little spotlight on, I think it was Fox 5 News.
Really?
Where they're trying to say, we're trying to convince Texas lawmakers to pass favorable tax. Like, he goes, movies shouldn't be lost to Georgia. We're Texas.
Wow.
We should
I agree
have
with
movies.
him.
And he goes, and they're like, well, do you not like California? He goes, well, I like Texas.
Interesting. Very interesting. Wow.
So
wow, that's interesting. No, I had no idea that was happening. Well,
Yeah,
we
big
certainly have it here in Georgia, and it's I'm kind of happy. I think it's
I
cool
hope
that
we
they
never
film
lose
movies
it.
here. Yeah. Well, hey, it's up to the people in charge. They could lose it. For
What
us.
a great list of classics.
Did we cover all yours? You didn't miss anything, did you?
Yep, we got
Okay.
them all.
That's
we had at least
great.
4 or 5 that overlapped.
And we knew we would. Classic films. It's our lives. It was our lives growing up. We love them. We love entertainment. We love TV shows. Hey, that's why I do the show. Is I have a passion for all
can we
this
do this
stuff.
again
And it's
next
fun.
week?
Yeah, let's do it again next week.
All
If they'll have me back.
I'll put it on my calendar.
If I don't get the dreaded email and phone call, it's BK on the air. Listen to me on the podcast.
May tomorrow be a perfect day. May you find love and laughter along the way. May God keep you in His tender care till He brings us together again. Good night, everybody.
End of line.